Merry meet. Welcome to the podcast for broomstick riders, candle hoarders, moon gazers, kitchen witches, and all you beautifully curious souls. This is Anonymous Crone, the podcast where we stir the cauldron of history, sip from the chalice of folklore, and occasionally cackle into the void. I am your hostess with the mostest, the Anonymous Crone herself, wrinkled in all the right places, filled to the brim with tea, trouble, and tales of the old ways. I've seen some shit, if you will. So I'm a solitary practitioner, an eclectic witch entering my crone era, not to be confused with midlife crisis, because mine involves more full moon rituals and less fucks given. Welcome to the cringeworthy first episode introduction to my podcast. Today we're starting off with what is paganism. This podcast is going to be going to be a place where we're going to be able to talk about real life pagan practice. You know, the kind that gets dirt under your nails, gets wax on your altar, and the occasional quiet remark from your neighbor because you were just talking to yourself and crying under the full moon. Each episode, I'm going to guide you through the tangled magical forest of modern paganism. And trust me, there's a lot of branches to paganism. Paganism is just a big old umbrella with all different kinds of beliefs underneath it. We're going to talk about everything from casting circles to dealing with skeptical family members to calling on deity and who they actually are. So who am I, really? Well, I'm what you'd like to call a solitary pagan, meaning I don't belong to a coven at all. I work alone. I get to make my own hours, my own schedule. I started on my path back in the late 90s when witchcraft books were hidden behind vampire novels in the bookstores. And the internet really wasn't a thing for you to look up the phases of the moon or anything like that. And if it was, you had to use dial-up. I'm that old. So me, myself, I've dabbled in Wicca. I've walked through green witchery. I've spent some time with the Norse gods, who, let me tell you, do not fuck around. I've eventually carved out my own practice, though, rooted in nature, lunar cycles, intuition, and a deep feeling of connection that's formed my path. I've taken a little bit of everything I've learned throughout my life until my own personal doorway to the goddess opened up. So, I'm eclectic. The minute someone tells you that there's only one right way to be a witch, quietly or not, walk out of that circle and go home. This podcast is going to touch on so many different ways, so many different practices, so many paths and beliefs. There's not one right way to be who you are. You are as different as the person next to you. Now, as I step into my crone phase, which, by the way, is not about age, but it's about wisdom, power, and confidence, I'm embracing my role as a guide, a mentor, a magical grandmother who's seen it all, probably been there, done that. Does that mean I know everything? No, it does not. I am always learning. I'm always trying to broaden my horizons, to expand my mind. I'm not limited to what I think I know now. So this podcast is going to help me expand all of those. It's going to help me keep those chakras open and learn and feel more. If you would like to share your path, if you would like to share your 2 cents worth or challenge what I've said in any podcast, any episode, please do that. I'm actually going to share my email address here probably toward the end of this episode in every episode going forward. And I welcome feedback. I welcome new knowledge. So just throwing that out there. Like I said, I'm always learning. Yes, I'm a mentor. I'm a teacher. I'm a leader. But I'm also, like I said, a perpetual student of life. Always learning, never closed-minded. And that's how I've got to where I am today. But anyways, I could go on and on about that. Now, before we do a deep dive into this episode, I'm going to clear up a few things. There is a lot of, there's a lot of myths. There's a lot of things that people just, not us pagans or us that have an open mind, but a lot of what the world, they have this skewed view of pagans, of witches, of druids, of anybody that doesn't meet their cookie cutter religion. So I'm going to just address a few things. I'm going to go over a few things just in this first episode, just to get it out of the way. That way, going forward, moving on, we all have a basic understanding about kind of the story, the buildup of where us pagans, I won't say came from, but yeah, pretty much. So what is paganism? Well, if it involves revering nature, celebrating the seasons, and not thinking that the divine is limited to an old man on the cloud, it's probably somewhere underneath the pagan umbrella. So is it people in cloaks dancing naked under the full moon? Yeah, sometimes. Is it Aunt Marge with her crystal collection and her 5 cats? Also sometimes. But the truth is actually far more ancient, far more complex, and dare I say, far juicier than any Hollywood stereotype. So pour yourself a little something something, a little wine, a little meat, a little chamomile tea, or whatever you fancy. I don't judge. And settle in. We're going to wander through history, peek into temples, slip into folklore, and trace the winding, root-deep paths that lead us to what we now call paganism. All right, so this very first episode, as you can tell, I might be just a little bit nervous. In future episodes, we can come back to this one and laugh at it together. So anyways, so we're going to get a little bit technical, not like too technical. I'm going to kind of just give a brief history of the word pagan and where paganism, I won't say originated from because history does not document it that far back. Just know though, there have been the goddess, Mother Earth. There were cave etches of Mother Earth back in the caveman days. This is a very, very old religion. It's nothing new. And a lot of religions this far, that dates this far back, they were not written in history books. It was just the way life was. The only thing that really was documented is when different religions started changing or they're setting rules. And we'll get into that in a later episode or whatever. But let's start at the word pagan. The word itself, pagan, literally means in Latin, paganus, meaning country dweller. Back in Roman times, this wasn't a mystical title. It just pretty much meant that guy outside who's hoeing his beans. Imagine being defined over forever as small town folk. So pagans were just people of the land. That's all it was. But when Christianity started sweeping through the Roman Empire, paganus became shorthanded for those weirdos who still worship the old gods instead of joining us here with the new religion. Meaning, it's those stubborn neighbors who charge their crystals under the moon while we're all over here talking about Jesus. They haven't converted yet. So that's where pagans came from. Their distinct separation between the Christians and the non-Christians. But by the Middle Ages, pagan actually got a big old PR makeover, not a flattering one. It meant heathen, heretic, or if you were unlucky, witch. And we all know how that reputation went. Spoil alert, not great for the folks accused of being a witch. Yeah, we know how that went. So we're going to fast forward actually to the 20th century when witches, druids, spiritual seekers, they started dusting off the word, polishing it up and saying, you know what? Yes, I'm a pagan and I'm proud of it. Pagan became a reclaimed identity rather than an insult. But let's be honest. At Thanksgiving dinner, some of us, we're really just one pass the gravy away from an inquisition from an aunt who always gives you the side eye and, just doesn't understand. But what happened when Christianity took center stage? Well, picture this. The Roman Empire. Temples were repurposed. Statues were toppled over. Festivals borrowed and rebranded. Samhain became All Saints' Day and eventually Halloween. What about the horns of Pan? Rebranded as the devil. Classic marketing move. You take your competitor's mascot and turn him into a villain. But here's the thing. Paganism did not vanish. It shape-shifted. It hid in folklore, in seasonal festivals, in grandma's herbal remedies, in the farmer still planting by the moon, in fairy tales that we still whisper. The old gods, the old ways, may have gone underground, but they kept whispering in the cracks of stone churches and behind closed doors. And you'll find paganism climbing back out of the broom closet. The Roman poets of the 18th and 19th century went all misty-eyed over forests, ruins, and mythology. Then came the occult revival. Eliphas Levi scribbling about ceremonial magic. Helena Blavatsky dragging theosophy across continents, and eventually, suddenly very interested in druids, fairies, and the Egyptian gods. By the mid-20th century, Gerald Gardner stirs the pot and births Wicca. Alexander Sanders spins off Alexandrian witchcraft. The 1960s and 70s brought feminism, environmentalism, and a neo-pagan revival. And before you know it, people are lighting candles for Artemis again, chanting for Gaia, and yes, dancing naked under the moon. Some traditions never go out of style. Modern paganism isn't about one ancient faith. It hasn't been resurrected perfectly intact. It's a patchwork quilt, part history, part imagination, part scholarly reconstruction, part lived experience. It's old roots with new blossoms. Future. So those are the Norse traditions, honoring gods like Odin and Freya and Thor, the ancestors of old who pack a punch to teach the hard lessons, gentle enough to trust your soul with completely. They live virtuous lives, honoring their ancestors and connecting with nature. Then we have Druidry. The Druids, deep Celtic inspired, full of trees and poetry. They're bards. They have deep reverence for the land and the ancestors. The land, nature, ancestors, that's going to be one of the common themes that really ties us all together. Then you have Hellenism and Roman Reconstructionism. Excuse me, I have an offering for Zeus. Yes, the real Zeus. This sect is centered around the Greek gods, and I would love to get into this one too. If this is your path, or if you know a lot about this path, please email me, and I'm going to have that email, like I said, in just a little bit. So get your pen and paper ready. That way you can write it down and become a guest speaker on that episode, or just write in and I'll read your emails on this podcast. We also have animism and shamanism. Seeing spirits in every rock, tree, river, and crow that stares at you a little too long. Again, very nature-based, very spiritual. It's a really cool path. Again, if this is your path, hit me up. There's beauty in all paths. There's no pagan pope telling you if you're doing it right or wrong. Paganism is messy, diverse, sometimes a little contradictory. But you know what? It's all the more magical for it. So, I've already said a few things that ties us together. Let's go ahead and get into the core of paganism. And these cores, they're just a few. Everything I'm touching on today is very brief. I'm only given a couple samples of this. That's why this is the theme of this big podcast that I'm doing. There's going to be so many episodes because there is so much to learn about paganism. So despite the diversity, some threads keep weaving through, like I was saying. One, reverence for nature. I mean, just the few examples I've given, you can see that. Polytheism or pantheism, meaning we're not limited just to one God that rules everything. We believe in multiple deities. There is a god over this, a goddess over that. Sometimes those gods and goddesses are under another god or goddess, but not really. It's very, very, very interesting. Cyclicular time. I cannot say that word. But the seasons, the moon phases, life, death, rebirth, it's all a wheel. It's all a big circle. We believe in reincarnation. But don't worry, we're going to do a whole big episode dedicated to that. I promise. Reincarnation is fascinating. There's so many examples, so many documented cases of it. It's very fascinating. Magic and rituals as tools for transformation. Again, stay tuned. We're gonna have an episode on altars and magical tools and how to use them and what they mean. And do you have to have, something shiny that came from, some expensive store? All that's coming up. Celebration and community, whether it's in covens or solitary under the stars. Personal experience. So you believe in what you feel, what you see, what comes to you and what feels right to you. You believe in that over what someone has told you you've got to believe. If you can, I know what I'm trying to say, and I've rewritten this line a million times. What you know to be true to your core, if you stick with that over what someone in church says, this is the book and you have to follow it to a T, you just might be pagan. Anyways, paganism, it's less about creed, more about worldview. Finding the sacred in the soil, the beauty in the storm, the story being told by the stars, and the magic within yourself. So, paganism is, it's many things. A return to the old gods, a celebration of land and cycle, a reclamation of traditions once silenced, or simply the whisper of truth that says, I find the divine outside these church walls. Through centuries of dismissal, suppression, romanticism, reinvention, paganism survives because people keep hungering for connection to the earth, to the cosmos, to their ancestors, to mystery itself. And maybe, just maybe, because dancing around a bonfire is a lot more fun than sitting through a 3-hour sermon. So let's address just a few things that are common myths of witchcraft. Myth 1. You have to be initiated by a coven. Nope, that's wrong. You can initiate yourself. You don't need a robe or sword, dramatic fog machine, anything like that. You can walk into it, learn, feel under the stars, listen to what that full moon is telling you. Open up your heart, your mind, your soul. Open up your chakras and just feel the cosmos around you. That's enough initiation. All right. Myth number 2, you need expensive tools. That is not true. You can cast a very powerful spell with a dollar store candle, a plastic spoon, and sheer willpower. Trust me, been there. Sometimes I still go there. I think my last ritual I did in the kitchen while my husband was sleeping on the couch. I actually made my circle. I raised my own power, not very loud, but man, that spell worked. And I think I used a birthday candle and a couple things that were just sitting out. So yeah, we're going to, like I said, we're going to get a little bit more into that in a future episode, altars and magical tools. All right. Myth 3, we sacrifice babies. Obviously, no. That's something made up by the scared and jealous and just people that were just trying to take paganism and turn it into something horrible. And also the Hollywood movie endings, because some people ran out of ideas. So yeah, pagans have got such a bad rap, but you know what? We're pushing through that. We're finally breaking through, showing who we are. There's so many of us now, more than there has been in a long time. So, but all right. There's nothing cookie cutter about paganism or our fellow sisters and brothers of the craft. We all have our own beliefs and different rituals. Sometimes we come together in a circle. Sometimes we're on our own in our pajamas in the backyard. There's no wrong way, as long as you set your intentions and you have confidence in the magic inside you and believe that it's real. So if you've ever shouted, "So mote it be," with dirt and cat hair on your altar because your cat jumped on it during ritual, well then, congratulations, you're a real witch now. And also, for the love of goddess, If you are a new or baby practitioner, please don't try a hex as your first spell. Never works out. Go ahead and just try a protection charm or maybe tea. That works just as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, and if you bared with me this long, this is just our introduction. This is me getting comfortable talking. I usually talk to myself anyways, but there's no banter between me and somebody else right now, like a lot of podcasts are. So it's just, like I said, just me. I've written out, my episodes, and I'm trying not to make it sound like I'm reading it. I'm just trying to talk, but make sure that, I don't just go off on my own thing. So I've written this down. But if you've enjoyed it and you've stuck with me so far, and you believe that future episodes, they're going to enhance, they're going to teach you, or if you just find it interesting, please share it with your coven, your book club, or that one coworker who keeps stealing the office crystals. I want to hear how your soul has led you to your path. Please email me your story or send in your questions. My email address is acronepodcast@gmail.com. And because I'm a crone now, each episode will end with a crone's blessing. And if you don't know what a crone is, don't worry. The first full-length episode is going to be Maiden Mother Crone. I will explain everything. So I'm going to leave you with a crone's blessing. Think of it as a little magic send-off from me to you. From soil and star, our spirits grow. Old wisdom whispers all we know. Through moonlit paths our powers stream. We walk in truth, we walk in dreams. Stand proud, dear child, of root and flame. The pagan way is not of shame. With oak and stone your soul takes flight. Blessed be your path in love and light. Thank you for joining me on this winding path through the roots of paganism. I'm the Anonymous Crone, and this has been our first little fireside chat. Until next time, may your steps be guided in wisdom, mystery, and the turning of the wheel. Blessed be.